What's up, Silas here? So I was just thinking about this when people talk about that the wealthy people are out of touch. What does it mean to be in touch with just people? This whole idea that your average person lives the same way, or like let's say you're middle class, you're really in touch with the way poor people live or the way wealthy people live. It kind of doesn't make sense. If somebody lives a kind of life that's going to make them out of touch with your kind of lifestyle, chances are you're living a lifestyle that's also out of touch with their kind of lifestyle. Like this one thing that kind of got me to think about this was I was just watching something on YouTube and about John Cena, this wrestler, and he was dating this other wrestler called Nikki Bella, and it was like, oh, the 10 things, the 10 crazy rules that Nikki Bella had to live at, and John Cena was going on things like, oh, the house has to be clean in a certain way, you have to have breakfast. If you're not going to have breakfast, you have to call him, or you have to wear shoes in the house. You have to be dressed for formal dinner once a week, or you can't have dogs. Oh, I'm not ready to have kids, things like this. And then somebody in the comment section was like, this is horrible. She should be treated like a queen. And I was kind of thinking, like, wait, I'm thinking about the queens and things that I know, the little that I know about the lives of queens, and they're very regimented. And you see this the way people are like, oh, you got to treat me like a queen, you got to act like a queen. But the requirements that a queen has, the rules that Nikki Bella was following, that John Cena was setting, are nothing compared to the actual rules and requirements that a queen has. Being someone like a queen doesn't mean freedom to do whatever you want. It's actually the opposite. I know, like, for Luffy in One Piece, this manga and anime, he says being the king of pirates means to have the freedom, not to run things, but to have the freedom. That's not what it is being a king. If anything, being homeless, being on the opposite side of the spectrum gets you to the point where you don't really have to do stuff. So I'm not saying like, oh, being homeless gives you freedom, but that whole idea of just being out there and just being going with the mood of things, going with the way things go. I'm just gonna do this in my life. I'm gonna do that. Yes, being extremely wealthy, you can let things go, but chances are to be extremely wealthy, to be extremely high on some kind of totem pole, it normally means a lot of people require you to do certain things in order for them to go on with their life. So there's a lot more expectations, and there's also a lot more chances that you are to maintain that position. If you want to maintain that position, there's a lot of things you have to do in order to maintain that position. Of course, there's a very small who could just do nothing for the rest of their life and just still be that wealthy and powerful. But definitely being homeless, you just do nothing and you can maintain the homelessness. So yeah, what do you guys think about that whole idea of people thinking they understand what it is to be in a certain point of this whole, oh, we should be treated like a queen? Does anyone deserve to be treated like a queen, or is a queen and that kind of thing something people should earn? Another thing that goes along with that was I was just reading this other manga I've talked about before, Golden Kamuy. It's about Japan around the Showa era, not the Showa era, around the post-war era, this transition. It's following this tribe of Ainu and just what's going on in that time. And right now they're on the border with Russia and Japan. And there was one thing that was actually being discussed in there about a related thing on the whole understanding who understands who. Do you think the elite, the royals, those people have more of an ability to understand what it is to live as a peasant, or does a peasant in that kind of lifestyle have more of an ability to understand what it is to live like a royal? They were talking about how at that time, I think this is back in, I want to say it's like back in the time when samurais were kind of going out of style, and like I don't know what exact years this are in the thing, but anyway, there's this part. Okay, here we go. It says Zoya's nobility. Hasegawa was able to figure out that Sophia was from the noble classes for two major reasons. One was her use of French. French was the language of nobles and polite society in the 18th to early 19th century in Russia and around the world, with some noble families conversing entirely in French. Though there was some pushback in favor of Russian language in the 19th century, French was still a major language among the elites until 1917. So Sophia spontaneously speaking French would have been more or less proof of her origin. Also, according to an 1897 census, the rates of literacy in the Western Russia were 33% for men and 14% for women. In Vladivostok, it may well have been lower. The chances of a Russian peasant in the area being able to read and write Russian would have been very low. So this was coming up in this comic in the sense where there was some groups that were involved with actually. It's a bit spoiler if you haven't read the manga, but it takes historical information, historical locations. It's a really great manga. You should really check it out. So these groups of revolutionaries were involved in some political intrigue going on in Russia, and they were talking about how the nobles used to infiltrate the peasantry and kind of go in and kind of sow out different kind of they were trying to get the peasants to have an uprising and take down the nobles, not the nobles, the royalty. So that's a kind of situation. Now, this is kind of like going back into the whole like deep state things that are going on in the United States of America. People talking about how, oh, the elites are doing all these things and trying to change what people work. And then I've talked about how you have certain people in certain positions like betting, doing $1,000 bets, just like talking about it on television, like in sports. Oh, we're betting 1,000 off of this because 1,000 is nothing to them. Yet, majority of the people in the United States of America don't have 1,000 in savings cash. If something happened, they have to go to credit or insurance or things like that. So that whole understanding, that whole ability. Now, the nobles could go into peasant society and try to fit in, but the peasants could still kind of pick up on what's wrong with these people. Changes, simple changes like just being literate and having the literacy, and some people not being able to do that. Knowing multiple languages, being able to speak certain things. So let's say you were a peasant and you can actually even get into a noble area. How would you be able to go in there and even understand what they're saying? Yet the inverse could happen. Technically, a noble could just go in and pretend to be a peasant and just work at some store somewhere. They could do this. So could they relate to that life? So this whole idea of who's actually able to relate, and also this kind of cool seeing that this thing has, not kind of cool, but just kind of normal and expected seeing that this whole idea of the nobles, people trying to influence the majority of the peasants or the people below them or other classes, just people trying to exert influence to get things that they want to be done is a very common thing. This whole idea of people thinking, oh, the elites today, the deep state, or these machinations behind these political machinations behind the scenes are something so unique, or the world is getting so much worse. No, things were so much worse in the past. Political assassinations used to be actual, just, I'm going to shoot you in the head. It wasn't like character assassinations where it's like we're going to make your fan base seem like deplorables. We're going to make you seem like crazy people, like NPCs. It was like, no, we're just going to completely just off your leadership. We're going to completely just kill people off. We're going to have bloody uprisings and things like this. So that whole idea is still there. But just coming back to the thing, how much do you think it is possible for somebody in a lower class to understand what's going on in the upper classes versus somebody in the upper class supposedly understand what's going on in the lower class? That makes any sense. So another thing, I think people can learn a lot from sports. Think about someone like LeBron James. He's called the king of basketball, one of the best ever. Now, do you think LeBron James can relate to what it is being just like your average basketball player? And this, you just go to like a random court in the neighborhood, an average basketball player, even a pretty decent basketball player in like a regular league. Do you think he can relate to that? He probably can in some way because he worked his way up. But at the same point, right now, the kind of things LeBron James needs to do on a daily basis to be the king, the amount of dedication and influence he actually puts into that, is on another level that I don't think your average basketball player can really relate to. But LeBron James can technically do the same amount of work that your average basketball player does. He can decide to start doing that and just live that way. I mean, people would still know it's LeBron James and be a whole different deal, but he could just be like, I'm just going to join a YMCA league, and that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to parent to have a regular 9 to 5 job or just some other kind of job and just play on a rec league. And I'm going to be pretty decent in a rec league. I'm going to shoot around maybe 1 hour a day, tops like that, and just be pretty decent at this. And he could do that. But can your average rec league player go out and put in the work like LeBron James does? So this whole idea that, oh, those people are elites, so they can't really relate to the day-to-day lives of the average person. There is also this flip side where the average person seems to think they can relate to the day-to-day lives of the elites, or they'd be able to do that. And I don't really get where that comes from, but it's also there in religion. You know, there's this whole thing where people are like, oh, God works in mysterious ways. But let me explain to you how mysterious those ways are. Oh, you just don't really understand God. You got to read the Bible. You have to understand these things. But Let me tell you all the great things God has done for my life and can do for your life. So, this whole idea that God is so above us, this supernatural being that created everything, that works in these mysterious ways, that does all these things, yet me as an individual, I can somehow understand this God and have this personal relationship with Him that I can tell you about and know enough about you that it's going to be beneficial for your life. So, there's that kind of weird thing kind of going on there.
So why does this matter to me? As I said, most of the problems in the world, if not all the problems in the world, exist because of how we define X rather than what X actually is. So if you can get to a point where you can understand what people mean by rich, wealthy, poor, happy, sad, privileged, oppressed, all these kind of things, then you can kind of get to understand that there's a shared humanity within all of us. Or at least you can understand how somebody's life may exist, and you may look at them in a different way and not think, oh, this person just knows better than we do, or I'm going to instruct because this works for my life, it must work for their life. Or, oh, if this would make me happy, I'm sure that person who has those things are going to be happy with it. When you don't know what they went through to actually get those things, they don't know what you've been through to be where you are. There might be things in your background that lead to you actually ending up having more than what these people want, or you may actually have exactly what they want. This kind of saying I thought of where there's people all around the world killing themselves to get the kind of lives that are killing other people. You have people in situations where they're committing suicide at high rates, yet there's other people who seem to be doing things, walking hundreds of thousands of miles across different countries, taking all these dangers, dealing with all these unscrupulous people in order to just be at the lowest class in this certain societies, when you have people in those societies who are ostensibly in the higher classes on material basis is talking about how evil and horrible these societies are. And I've had the experience of living in different countries, in different cities, in different urban, rural areas, having people look at me and consider me wealthy, and then have other people consider me extremely poor, like in some extreme dire need of their help. And it's just, I think there's got to be a way for us to communicate better and understand each other and be able to cross these class divides, be able to kind of express what it is to be a poor person in the United States of America in actual terms, and have somebody who's maybe wealthy in somewhere like Bangladesh be able to actually read that and understand this person's issues. Have those two people be able to value what they have, value what they don't, understand steps they need to take to actually probably improve the things they want to improve, understand steps they need to take to avoid getting in a worse situation than they actually are. And then we can all kind of help each other out in this situation. I don't know. What say you? Let me know what you think. Links below to the merchandise store, PayPal, other things. Help me out. And thanks for listening. Goodbye.